Hello, beloved. Today is Wednesday in the second week of Lent 2024, and my name is Reverend Father Anthony Mario Ozele of the Catholic Diocese of Warri in Nigeria. Thank you for joining me. Today's liturgical readings are from Jeremiah chapter 18 from verse 18 to verse 20 and Matthew's Gospel chapter 20 from verse 17 to verse 28. And I'm going to be reflecting with you today on the theme, danger of selfish ambition. It's an amazing story that we have in today's gospel text. The mother of James and John shows up with her children to request of Jesus that they be given the most prominent seats when Jesus enters into his kingdom. Why did she do that? Well, because she loved her children and was proud of them, and because she has great dreams and aspirations for her children. Which mother wouldn't do the same thing if given the opportunity? My dear brothers and sisters, we live in an ambitious world. We don't just want to know who is the best, who is the fastest, who is the smartest, who is the toughest, and who is the richest. We actually would want to be the best, the fastest, the richest, the strongest, and the smartest. Is that not the reason why many people today want to make the pages of the Guinness Book of World Records? For many people, life is all about winning and losing. I guess the reason why the mother of James and John came to Jesus was because she wanted her sons to be the best. She wanted to make sure that her boys came out ahead of everyone else. And if that meant asking for a favor from the Lord, she was glad to do it because she felt that her boys deserved it. She had big dreams, big ambitions for her children. And despite what you may think, ambition itself is not evil. If you don't have any ambition, then why bother to wake up in the morning, get out of bed, and go to work? You might as well roll over and sleep the entire day. Ambition is merely a strong desire regarding the future. As such, it can be either positive or negative. It could be good or bad. It could be righteous or evil. Ambition can be very useful if it is directed towards the right things. So I ask you, what are your ambitions? What do you dream about? What are your secret hopes and desires for your own life? Now, it's important to note the context of this story because it is quite crucial. This event occurs near the end of Jesus' ministry. In fact, it takes place about a week before the crucifixion, as Jesus and his disciples were already headed towards Jerusalem. So while Jesus is coming to grips with the bloody death that lays ahead of him, his top disciples were busily jostling for better seats in the kingdom. And who can blame them? Everybody wants to be somebody. We all want to be near the center of power. And we say, or at least we think, if I can't be somebody, then let me be near someone who is somebody. That way, we can bask in the reflected glow of greatness. You see, dear friends, it's easy to feel that knowing God entitles us to some special preferential treatment. You know, we can easily say, well, Lord, I'm your servant. Lord, I'm your minister. So you've got to answer this prayer. Lord, I've been faithful to you. Lord, I pay my tithes. I do my offerings. Now you've got to keep up your own end of the bargain. So the text says, the mother of the sons of Zebedee approached him with her sons and did him homage. There's a parallel text in Mark's Gospel. And in that text is James and John that come to Jesus to ask. Now, if you put all of this together, it indicates that somewhere, somehow, there's been a discussion between James and John and their mother. Perhaps their mother was involved because they all agreed that Jesus would be more sympathetic if the request came from her. So this action of James and John's mother underlies a danger that parents often face. That of fulfilling the parents' dreams or fulfilling God's desire for their children. All too often, we see parents who are doing everything they can to get their children to live the kind of life they have always desired to live, but they couldn't attain it. So they want their children to live vicariously for them. Hence, it's always important to observe that the good desires of parents for their children, if not properly managed, may actually not be the same as God's own desires for those children. Selfish ambition is a sin. Sometimes parents push their children so hard towards fulfilling their own desires, towards becoming ambitious for the things that they desire, not the things that God desires for those children. And this can also be said in spiritual matters. This can also be said of believers in the church. What James and John and their mother were doing was not focusing on Jesus, but focusing on themselves. They simply wanted to use their relationship with Jesus as a leverage to attain higher status. And St. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2 verse 3, do nothing out of selfishness or out of vainglory. What James and John and their mother were doing was out of selfishness and vainglory. Vainglory is an overly high opinion of oneself, and selfishness is akin to narcissism. It is often expressed by building up oneself while tearing down others. And Galatians chapter 5 verse 20 calls it one of the works of the flesh. While James chapter 3 verse 16 says it leads to disorder and every evil practice. Such attitudes, my dear friends, often lead to war. War in the workplace, war at home, war in society. And yes, you heard me right, war. So can war happen in the church? Yes, it has before, and it can happen again. And why? Because there is no limit to how far a person with selfish ambitions will go in order to gain a coveted position. There's no limit. We see it in secular politics all the time. And we see it in the church. And Jesus condemns this kind of behavior in all of the synoptic gospels. In verse 38, Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking." It is obvious that James and John underestimated the cost of following Jesus Christ, and they overestimated their own importance. They were not asking for work in the kingdom, in the coming kingdom, which would have been a nobler request. They were not asking for duty. They were not asking for responsibility. They were asking for honor, for privilege. And this is still happening in our society today. It is still happening in the church today, in every sphere of life. Lots of people do not want to work, but they want honor. They want privileged positions. Is that your attitude? Are you looking for work in God's kingdom? Or are you just asking to be blessed, to be prospered, to be promoted, without asking God to use you as an instrument and a vessel of righteousness in your generation? This season of Lent, let us rethink our attitude. Let us rethink our ways, abandon selfish ambition, and make ourselves more available to the service of God and His kingdom. Let me conclude with the words of Leonard Ravenhill, who summed up the Christian life this way, and I quote, "God isn't training Boy Scouts, He's training soldiers." And yes, Leonard is right. If you follow Jesus, you have to be ready to do some hard lifting as a soldier would. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing. God bless you real good.